This is Let's Talk Business with your host, Marc Ebinger. Now, here's Marc.
Welcome back to the Let's Talk Business podcast. Coming up on the show today, we're going to talk about how mastering financial forecasting isn't just a nice to have, it is a game changer. In studio with us today is Mike Lovelace, a fractional CFO and advisory practice leader at MGR Accounting Recruiters. Mike, interestingly enough, is an Eagle Scout, has an MBA from UT Austin, is a CPA, a CMA, which is a certified management accountant, a CISA, certified information systems auditor, a board member for the San Antonio chapter of IMA, which is the Institute of Management Accountants, and the immediate past president of the Texas Council of IMA. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you here, man. I wish my resume was that impressive. Right? Eagle Scout's no joke, right? That's a lot of work to get one of those done.
It is.
How many years does that take?
The way I did it, longer than some, but probably 6 or 7.
Okay.
Is it once an Eagle Scout, always an Eagle Scout?
Yes, that's why I say I'm still an Eagle Scout.
Nice. Love that.
All right. I'm your host, Marc Ebinger, the owner of Krukus Virtual Staffing. I'm not an Eagle Scout, a company that recruits and staffs experienced overseas administrative assistants for insurance agents who need help with policy management, claims processing, and client communication.
And I am Heather Boehme. I'm pretty sure I'm not allowed to be an Eagle Scout because I'm a girl. I don't think they have those.
Actually, that's changed.
Oh, of course it has.
But we don't need to swerve into that this morning.
Of course it has changed. I'm a certified business coach and owner of Onset Professional Development, where we help overwhelmed and burnt out business owners gain control of their business and time through process mapping, strategic facilitation, training, and coaching.
And I'm Howie Nestel. I was a Cub Scout and was asked not to return after the first season.
First season, he calls it. That's not Survivor, Howie.
It seemed like it. I'm from Laredo. Camping, are you serious? It was 140 degrees.
Yeah, right.
But I own an ad agency called Sharkmatic Advertising. And one thing that I realized after being in marketing for 30 years is that most businesses struggle with marketing. I own an ad agency, and there are certain things that I struggle with my own marketing. So over the past 3 decades and 1,500 clients later, my team and I have developed a signature approach, let's call it, to helping our clients communicate their message effectively and economically. As a result, I'm happy to say most of my clients dominate their field. So I do web design, search engine optimization, and all kinds of influence digital marketing. So if you want to know more about that, go to sharkmatic.com and set an appointment with us.
You know, I picked up on the components of your elevator pitch there that you taught on before. You hit on all of them, too.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, nice job.
Appreciate it.
All right,
that was better than my practice introduction.
Yeah,
right?
it was. Yeah, very on key. All right, a quick reminder to follow the Let's Talk Business podcast on all major podcast platforms and social media where you can catch video versions of the show, which is how I like to recap it. You can get to everything easily from our website at satalkradio.com. Now, for those of you who are maybe catching this thing, we're right on the cusp of whether it's going to come before or after our event that we got on October 3rd. But if you went to the event on October 3rd, Mega Mixer, I hope you had a good time and got lots of business. And make sure that you're following us for the next big event that will come around. All right, so Mike, tell me a little bit about your background and how you ended up over at MGR.
Ooh, long story.
Let's do the short version.
The short version. Yeah, this is a 4-hour format, right?
No, it's 20 minutes. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So I started out as an accounting major at Baylor, and I thought that I would change. No, I knew that I would change when I found something more interesting. And I never did. So I never intended to graduate as an accountant. It just kind of worked out that way. But skipping ahead, I've owned my own firm in Houston for 14 years. We moved back to San Antonio, was connected through a friend of a friend, eventually found my way to MGR, and I've been there about 2.5 years.
What is it over at MGR that you're doing, and why do you love it or do you not love it? What's keeping you there other than the paycheck?
Aside from the fact that they pay me enormous sums of money, and this is a recorded conversation, I truly do love it. It's a fantastic organization. Mark Goldman was our founder, and although he is no longer actively involved in the company, it's a great place to be. We're owned by a company called Team Shares, where they actually flip part of the ownership to the employees, and then over time that percentage grows.
So you have
I am actually a part owner, an employee owner of not Team Shares, but of MGR.
Okay, and what's your primary function over at MGR?
I lead the practice for fractional CFO work and advisory consulting. So kind of wear two hats.
What is your ideal client profile? Who are you helping?
The short answer is anybody with money, but the longer answer that's a little bit more on target is folks that are in that 5 million to 50 million range in revenues, as long as it's not a single transaction that got them to 5 or 50 million.
Does it matter if it's service-based or product-based?
Nope,
or anything?
absolutely not.
All right.
And geographically, what areas do you serve?
We're based here in San Antonio, but we have clients all over the country.
Okay, I was going to say, because there's probably a limited amount of businesses that are in the $5 to $50 million range in San Antonio. At least that's what I've always understood or heard.
I think there
compared
are
to
more
bigger
than we
cities.
all know,
Okay.
because a lot of them fly under the radar, and a lot of them are happy to not be known about.
Okay.
So
Makes
where do
sense.
you meet them?
All over. I do professional speaking for professional associations, mentoring through campus university presentations, other networking events like the one on October 3rd and elsewhere. So all over the place.
Fractional CFO work, though, if a company has $50 to $500 million or $5 to $50 million in sales annually, would they really be looking for a fractional CFO, or do they have a full-time, or they have a full-time CFO and you're trying to convince them they probably don't need to spend that kind of money?
We generally try not to talk people out of continuing to employ the people they already
All right.
employ. That's
Well
not
said.
the hatchet job that we do. But generally, folks that are in that 5 million to say 25 million range don't yet have a CFO, and sometimes they think they need one, and they really don't need a full-time one. So what they desperately need is somebody to pay attention to those strategic issues, but not on a full-time basis. And so that's us.
Makes sense.
So what are the actual pain points that show up that tell people, yeah, we need someone else beside who we already have?
Frequently, it's the bank asking for more information than the bookkeeper or the spouse of the owner. Usually lovely people, or the kid of the owner that took a bookkeeping class maybe, or slept through part of an accounting class in college that's doing the work. So frequently at that 5 to 25 million range, it's the bank asking for more information and needing it more timely and more accurately than what they're getting from the company so far.
That's a kind of an underlying theme here at Let's Talk Business podcast, is these DIY stories. And so apparently it happens in the accounting world too.
I mean, absolutely. And that's the thing. So accounting is obviously complicated. You have to have a whole degree about it. So are you guys doing day-to-day financial advice, or is it really just that big picture strategy? And for those people listening who have no idea what a big picture financial strategy actually means,
Right.
like make more money is most business owners' big picture financial strategy. Like, it's expensive, make more money. So what does that actually look like from an accounting standpoint?
You asked a lot of questions
I
right in a
know.
row, and I have the attention span of a gnat.
Let's
so I'm
hone
gonna
in
try
on
to
this
give you
one.
All right.
Okay. So
What does that financial strategy actually entail? A strategy.
the strategy usually involves more than I want something new and shiny, and so I need more money to pay for it. And so the idea is I want to grow. I want to build this thing big enough that someone will want to buy it because I know my kids will never want to do it. Or I want to put it on such solid footing that even my kids can't screw it up when they inherit it.
And minimize my tax exposure. Yay or nay? That's next level.
We're
stuff.
not a CPA firm.
Okay.
So even though I am a CPA, we don't do taxes and we don't do audit, but
good.
we can make those less painful and hopefully less expensive by having your books clean before you ask for those services from somebody else.
Great. So then how do you differentiate from a bookkeeping service?
So we do a little bit of bookkeeping for a couple of clients, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes it was a friend, a favor, kind of a relationship, or it's something that we see that there's an opportunity long-term to help them with more than that. And so, yes, we'll
So it
we'll
sounds
take
like
that
you
on.
guys are kind of in between there, right? Which is, I don't know that we've had this conversation, not on a show I've co-hosted, where you have the bookkeeping people either in-house or outsourced. You have your CPA that's going to do your filing for you. And then you guys kind of work on both ends.
We're
You have
the
one foot here,
in-between.
one here, and you're in between.
Yep. So we understand the kinds of questions that your CPA is going to ask for tax at the end of the year. Those things need to be meaningfully captured, and it's a whole lot cheaper and easier to do it during the year than trying to take a giant box of receipts and ask for that poor person to make heads or tails out of that.
Yeah, this fractional work is becoming bigger and bigger of a thing. Fractional COOs, which we had one of those on, fractional CFOs. Do you love this? You look like you love this space.
I desperately enjoy what I do.
Look at all of
I
his
truly
hobbies
do.
and accolades and stuff that you read. They're all related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Boy Scouts wasn't, except that was a teaching. So
Right.
I actually am a retired former Scoutmaster, which really means my wife was a former Scoutmaster widow when I was serving the troop that our son was in.
Well, and in my opinion, doing something like an Eagle Scout, it's a progression. It's linear,
Yep.
right? So there's a method to it. So it's not that far off, actually, because numbers.
It's a lot of practice.
It's a lot of the same.
For my
kind of
day
stuff.
job.
Thank you for saving me on that one. You're still vertically integrated, Mike.
Cub
That's
Scouts is
vertically
way
integrated.
different, though. So
Yeah.
the fact that it didn't work out for you
Oh,
is
no.
not a reflection on you at all.
Right. That's why I ended up in marketing.
So, okay, so you said the pain point is the bank is asking for money or for information. Yeah.
Generally.
They're
Or
always
your
asking
CPA.
for money, but anyway.
And they have enough of it. I
Yeah,
don't
they
know what's
do.
going on with
They
that.
could just print more. I don't know. But so they're usually asking for information. Okay. So when do you think a business should contact you to start this relationship? Is it typically they're going to do it when they're already on fire?
Usually there is already pain. Hopefully it's the smaller things that are causing pain and not the enormous things that are on fire. So a lot of times what we see is an organization that's growing faster than its accounting systems and policies and processes can keep up. And so when that happens, people have to keep lots of spreadsheets. They're usually starting to work lots of overtime. And so when that starts to happen, the demand for information in the organization is growing faster than the accounting department's ability to produce it. So that's why how we get called in a lot of times.
So when it comes to strategic financial planning for, a business that's trying to grow anyway, how does a CFO help businesses with that strategy and in managing cash flow?
Ooh, good questions. There's a lot of need and I'd say foundation that helps to decide the strategy. So by that, I guess I'm getting that kind of backwards, but the idea is that you have a vision for the company. I want to grow. I want to build it up so much I can sell it and go sit on the beach or whatever. But if there aren't accounting processes that are in place to be able to support that growth, it's going to create a lot of problems. So a lot of times you'll see churn in the accounting department, a lot of turnover. People decide, I have options. I can go anywhere else where they have their act together. I don't want to stay here anymore. So a fractional person can come in and kind of give some guidance and structure to that. An interim role, which is what we do a lot of as well, is someone who slides in and says, that the last person had the job, they've left. In order to keep the wheels on, we will come in and be a part of that and lead that accounting or finance organization.
So let me ask
Leadership
you-
and clarity.
Yeah. I'm familiar with with MGR Accounting Recruiters because I met somebody who used to work there. I was under the impression when she spoke at a networking group that you all were looking to recruit accounting professionals and then they were being placed at these
100%,
firms.
yes. Yes.
And then to take it one step further, do those employees become employees of the company that hired them, or are they still employees of yours and you guys are an employee leasing agency, or do you have a leasing agency component to your business?
We generally don't, although once in a blue moon we will do that. The side of the business that you were talking about is what I like to call now our legacy side of the business. When we started the advisory side about 2.5 years ago, I referred to that as our core business. It's now our legacy business, and by that I mean it's something we started out doing and we still do it, but the advisory is as big as that originally core business.
Yeah.
So we will do perm placement. Occasionally those folks become clients of ours on the advisory side because they're already familiar with us. Not always, once in a while.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, makes sense.
And Heather, so obviously when a business is trying to, figure this financial plan out, having a clear vision of where they want to go is super key. It's something you talk about quite a bit.
Oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Knowing how big you want the business to be, what's the exit strategy? That's something I talk to people about a lot. But I actually kind of have a different question, if that's okay.
That was a question for you, actually. I was bringing that business
clarity.
Coaching and training side to, hey, you need to be clear on it. When you have employees that are looking to bail because of stress or because of chaos, right? That's where leadership, clarity, that made me think of.
Well, and that's a big thing I find in a lot of businesses that are under 5 million. You can even be at the $2-3 million mark and still just be hustling because you just have a product, or you're really good at marketing, or you're really good at sales, and still not have a lot of those back end processes or real clarity of vision. You can just be kind of an outstanding human being who's really good at this and kind of sucks at everything else, but you're really good at the money making bit. But to that effect, people get overwhelmed in that. They get really tied up in it. So beyond having the clarity of the future, which is what I work on with people a lot, like what do you want? Which I'm guessing you probably don't want to be asking them those questions. What are some of the things they can do before they hit 5 million from an entrepreneur perspective? Like, tell it to me like I'm 5-level money management that you would recommend to set them up for success when they bring you on to help them create a higher level strategy.
Well, one of the things we do with a lot of our clients is systems work. And so if you say that your current systems are insufficient, we can help them deal with that. If you are not yet at that 5 million, the most important thing is to build processes that will survive when the person in that role leaves. And so there needs to be knowledge that's kept in the organization that doesn't walk out the door when employee 2 or employee 4 out of the organization leaves. A lot of times, too, we see when it's a smaller organization, those are the ones that are exceedingly vulnerable to, hate to say the bad word, embezzlement or fraud, because they're the only one keeping an eye on the checkbook. And as long as the owner sees, I've got money in the bank account, we're going to make payroll, and I can still make my car payment, I'm a happy person.
I've seen that firsthand with clients of mine, that there's one gatekeeper of the money, the checkbook, the bank account, and they've embezzled money. But to challenge both of you, I love that clarity thing. And sure, and you ask clients, what do you want? Where do you see yourself deficient? But maybe just my experience with clients is different, but most of my clients that come to us for marketing, they don't know what they don't know. So they're only doing what they know, and they get the results they've always gotten because they're on that line. Mm-hmm. And they know that there's some things that they don't know, but most everything is in the category of what they don't know. So how often do you come in, and of course, clients' opinions are usually interesting but highly irrelevant, and you say, well, that's so awesome, client. Yeah, I agree with you. You probably should have some kind of electronic accounting system versus writing it down in a logbook. But let me tell you, you need a whole bunch of other things. Does that happen more often?
Absolutely. So we have clients that we'll do an accounting assessment for. It's an accounting systems and processes assessment. And we'll take a look at the people, the tools that they have in place, how they do those things. And then we prioritize, here are the 14 things that we think you need to work on. Some of these you need to do soon. They're going to kill you, next week. And others that you've got more time and you can fix those over time. So we try to help them triage
I have
what
clients.
matters.
I have 2 clients I'm thinking of right now, and unless y'all are mind readers, I will not say their names because you've met both of them. One of them is well over $1 million. Mm-hmm. The other one is, I would say, probably at $500,000. Both of them have been in business for more than 5 years. And one of them is going out of business and is starting to realize it. The other one is going to go out of business and has no idea. And both of them are relating to financial mismanagement. At different times, either the owners or people on their staff are really good at the making money thing and going out and selling stuff. But sometimes the economies change. Sometimes your staff doesn't deliver and you get a bad reputation. Sometimes just things change, right?
Yep.
But if they had a good understanding, and I'm talking about more than just what a bookkeeper reports to you at the end of the month. I'm talking about this in-between stuff, what a CFO would say, like, oh, so that would have saved them from where they are today, and they could avoid that. I brought in a speaker a few years ago, right after the pandemic. Well, there was no after. Well, everything's after the pandemic, I guess, but call it 2021. And I brought him in for a retreat. This guy was the number 3 or number 4 guy at Continental Airlines, which is United, right? United Continental. He was the CFO. And the reason why he was so freaking interesting to speak to these 120 entrepreneurs is because he's the one that figured out that how much they were losing on a daily basis when March of 2020 hit, how people stopped flying, and then, of course, airlines were shut down and all that stuff. He figured out, one, how much money they're losing globally, which apparently is not an easy thing to figure out, you know, when you have planes and this and fees and all kinds of stuff. He also figured out, more importantly, how many days it was going to take for them to go bankrupt. So he reached out to the other, obviously to his CEO and to the CFOs of the other airlines, and then they developed a plan to go talk to the government, and that's why they got bailed out first. They turned it into, I'm sure their marketing people got involved because, you know, I'm a marketer. No, but they came up with a strategy that it's a matter of national security because they're moving troops, because the government doesn't have enough planes to move all their own troops. So, and they got bailed out. I mean, they were the first ones and got a ton of money.
But I also feel like that level of complexity that goes with high-level finances is a part of the reason it becomes such a mess by the time they bring you in. Like, nobody that I know of, and it may have changed now, I'll have to check with my kids' teachers, money management, not taught in elementary schools, not taught in middle schools, not taught in high schools, not even taught in college. At any level.
It's not. I have 3 teenagers, and they're not being taught.
Same in business, though. Like, there's plenty of books and ways and things, but most people, like, it's almost like we need how to manage cash flow and finances for dummies, except no one would read it.
Well, the ones who need it wouldn't read it. The ones who would read it don't need it.
Don't need it. Yeah, that's right.
So what are some of those fundamental things that you think people should be doing? Like, stupidly simple. Like, if you could tell someone to do 5 things with their finances from the get of their business, what would those 5 things be?
Oh, my. We don't generally help startups because they usually don't have the money to pay for the help.
Well, exactly.
But if I don't know. Let's see. Focus on cash. Focus on servicing profitable clients that pay timely. A lot of times you can chase a big account for you. It's not going to be profitable, but you want it because it's sexy or the volume is helpful, okay? You don't want to compound that by also having that be a customer that pays slowly.
Yes. We need your pen. We're writing
Yeah,
down.
I know,
I'll take
right?
a
I'm
picture.
taking notes.
I'll take a picture of that.
Okay.
Focus on cash.
Focus on cash.
Cash.
And I have follow-up questions.
But-
Just
Hey,
go through all 5 of them.
Clients who pay. I like that.
Clients
I'm
who
old
pay.
fashioned.
That's important.
I tell people I'm
Receivables.
old fashioned. You know, I like to send an invoice and get a check back.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Well, back in the old days, you used to fax an invoice, and then I would fax a check.
Nice.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Digital marketing.
yep. Cash
Early
forecasting, understanding your cost structure and your obligations, your commitments is huge. A lot of times startup employers secure the bank financing with their house or their other personal wealth. And so the sooner that the company can stand on its own and not have your personal portfolio at risk is enormous,
Okay.
just from a risk management standpoint. I guess the last thing is that, you know, a lot of times in these smaller organizations, you've got the one bookkeeper, the one check person. Trust is not an internal control, and don't let that one person be the only person who's touching stuff.
Okay.
And that person should absolutely go on mandatory vacations for an extended period of time so that you have somebody else who has to step in and do that job.
Right.
And find out
It's a
what's going
military
on.
thing too. No one person is the only person who knows how to do it. Somebody else has to know that, so you can walk in. Maybe
So I think
Single
it could be
point
like
of
6 or 7
failures.
things there is my
Okay.
top 5.
So,
but-
well,
so-
that's the thing, though. Like, because all of them, it's focus on cash, clients who pay, forecasting, cost structure, and obligations don't create single point of failures. So, clients who pay, super duper clear.
Yep.
Don't create single point of failures. But what
like
does
that
focus on cash really mean?
understanding how soon it's going to come in and how fast it has to go out.
So it's a
real
cash flow,
versus
cash flow, but
growth.
also having cash because things happen. We had a sweetheart of a deal where we officed because a friend of mine owned the building. Then he sold the building, and I thought I was super clever by having 3 one-year options to renew my lease for a small step up. So I'm like, I'm covered for the next 3 years. I don't have to worry about it. Until I got a bill that it was equivalent to 70% of my base rent in triple net charges. Because the new owners decided they're going to remodel the building that they bought. And guess who's paying for it? All of the tenants.
Yep.
And it has nothing to do with my lease agreement. I mean, it does in the sense that I have a triple net option that I signed off on that gives them the latitude. Let me explain to people who own homes in San Antonio. If the county decides that your property tax is now going to be this, guess what? You have to pay it.
I'd love to swerve into politics, but I suspect that's not really what we're here for. But I desperately love talking about the immorality of our tax structure. But we don't want to go there today.
Right, but
afterwards.
Most people
note
agree with
pointed.
you on
Write that
that.
down, please.
Note pointed. Immorality
Make a note.
of the tax structure
Right.
in U.S.
Well, but it's back to Mike's first point, right? If you understand your cash, when it's coming in, when it's going out, what you're gonna have to pay for, and you have the rainy day fund and all that stuff, lack of cash will also kill a business, even if everything is going great.
Yep, you can be profitable and no cash,
Absolutely.
and you're screwed.
I just thought of another client who got a gigantic contract in Florida after the hurricane. I don't know which one or what they're named because I just don't keep track of that stuff. I don't watch the Weather Channel that often. And they got a contract to do a lot of work over there. And it was worth millions. And they staffed it with temp staffing. Mm-hmm. They took their big people from here, their supervisors, but then they hired a bunch of people there. And the contract with the state government said they had to be paid within 90 days because they're a small business, all kinds of stuff. Well, I'm not going to say who, but it might have been the governor, decided that he was just not going to pay people because he was waiting on federal money, and the federal money hadn't came. So I didn't get my money. Guess what? I'm not paying. 1 year later, this company ended up canceling most of the marketing with us. They lost domain names, they lost websites, they had a couple of websites. They stopped doing search engine optimization. They just stopped doing a whole bunch of things because they couldn't get their freaking money. So they said, hey, Howie, look, if you'll just keep doing all the stuff, when we get paid, we'll pay you. So and that shit flows downhill.
That sounds like a great deal, Howie.
I did do that for a little bit until I couldn't get a hold of them in a timely fashion. I just said, I'm going to cut my losses. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's the thing that I find that newer business owners don't really realize is that one of the tried and true money management techniques in business is if you don't have to pay it, don't. Mm-hmm. It's just like Dave Ramsey, right? There's priority lists.
Collect early, pay late. That's a philosophy.
Exactly. And people don't plan for that. So keeping track of that, I would almost also call focus on cash, actually look at it. Could be
all
one on here.
You should obsess about it, and you should have somebody in your team obsessing about it.
Yeah. But let me tell you that thing about collect early and pay late. And I had a big door manufacturer that did that. That was their MO and their philosophy. So if you gave them 30 days, they'd take 90. It's almost like they 2x the amount of time you gave them. Let me tell you the downside to that is that you then develop an adverse relationship with your vendors. And when you need something, they're going to be less likely to do it. And if they can't afford to do it for you, they're going to pass up on the business. So I used to do that. I started with my smaller vendors that I know rely on the money that they charge us and that we charge our clients. I got into the habit of paying them as soon as I got an invoice. Mm-hmm. So I was training them, invoice me, because while I have cash and I trust my clients are going to pay me, I'm never going to penalize you if the client doesn't pay me. You're always going to get paid. So when I need favors, and I needed one last week, one of our clients had a print vendor. We designed a magazine, and they went to their print vendor, and apparently they didn't have 2 weeks to print. They had 6 days to print, and within those 6 days, there was a weekend, and most printers don't work on weekends, so they really had 4 days to print. So then they came back to us. Third year we design it. First year we print it. I called the owner of a print company who is a friend of mine. I developed a good relationship with. He knows I'm a good pay. He put me through to his production manager. We had everything printed in 2.5 days, 400 books.
And Mike, I saw you chomping at the bit over there on relationship as well. What's on the downside?
I know they teach you in finance class to pay as slow as possible, but just like you're talking about, if you are able to pay and have a history and a reputation of paying promptly, your vendors will bend over backwards when you ask for the favor. Yeah. And so that's where we like to be.
And I think
as well.
This is where it comes into the operating procedures that you talked about, because a lot of smaller businesses, when they're first getting started, it's like, hey, pay me, here's the invoice. And there's no structure around consequences. What happens when they don't pay you? Because it will happen. What's the worst case scenario? What happens then? When do you send them to debt collectors? And you find in small businesses where they just have this rolling AR, and it's like they get what they get when they get it. But setting the boundary after that has been...
Well, it's a slippery slope. Then you have clients selling their receivables, and then that costs you money. First of all, if you send it to a debt collector, you're giving away 50% of your money sometimes. But and if you sell your receivables, you're discounting it by 2, 3, 4, 5% immediately to get cash. And Mike, you'll be better off telling us than me talking about this. But if somebody starts down that path, is it really a slippery slope where it just tends to get worse unless they catch up?
I'd say it certainly can be, but one of the things we try to do with our clients is focus on not just the financial statements, but looking at that accounts receivable aging and also the accounts payable aging. How much is it changing month to month on the farthest to the right column, the oldest AR and the oldest AP? And if you have a rather consistent amount that's of collectibles or receivables that's over 90 days, okay, that's one thing. If as a percentage of your AR that number fluctuates or the dollars swing wildly, that's something to pay attention to. And again, it may be a good thing if the number drops, but it can also be a reflection of something else. And
so your AR, your 90-day AR or older is not a good savings account.
Absolutely. It's not a deferred cash source. That's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and if again, depending on your accounting method, if you're, cash, fine, you don't have to pay tax on it. But if you're accrual, all that's on your books, and then it becomes a mess. I should have brought it up, but I didn't know we were going to talk about this. I have my list of AR with 90 days and 60 to 90 and all the way down to current. And I play a little game every 10 days to 2 weeks. It's called dialing for dollars. So I sit down with my list. And I have a ruler, and then I have a pen, and I write down. I texted them, I called them, we emailed them. They said they'd pay by this day. And then I call them back a week later. I'm like, hey, you didn't pay. And if I see anything in this column, that's where I start focusing. And then I look at the amount. And because there have been a lot of times where I waited too long, a long time ago, and then it was harder to collect, or they went out of business, or something happened.
And you like to be that person that's calling because you want to apply the pressure.
Right, but because I'm a nice guy,
Does that mean maybe you shouldn't be the one doing that?
No, I'm actually not a nice guy. People call me a bully all the time.
But that's the thing, though. I think the weight of having the actual owner call, beside like an assistant or someone, holds more power because you are the person, A, who has the authority, and B, is the one being ultimately affected by it.
Yes.
And like C, you have the power to say no more.
Right.
I will not do business
and that
with
happens,
you.
Right? You can't afford to continue to finance your clients, especially when their revenue is higher than yours. It's not a hard sell. You just say, look, I'd love to be able to give you another 36, 90 days. I just can't afford it. So I know you owe me money, and you're obviously going to pay me whenever you feel like you can pay me. But just moving forward, I don't want to get deeper in the hole. So we're just going to pause all work until you get caught up.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, we get a check.
It's very industry specific. So, there are industries out there where it just takes longer. Construction, it's going to take what it takes, but you still need to be diligent and follow up with those folks and make sure that they know that you haven't forgotten.
What's the craziest CFO parachute in and fix a company by industry, not by company name? But can you give an example of you had to parachute in to fix something and it was just a complete disaster?
This was not from a cash collection standpoint, but from a systems implementation standpoint. So a client had approached us about helping them do a system implementation. We kind of laid a few things out, not the whole story, but we laid a few things out, and they said, okay, that's interesting. Thanks, no thanks. We can do it ourselves with the manufacturer or the vendor of the software. We said, okay, great, cool. A month before go live, we got the phone call that said, I'm drowning here. I desperately need help. Can you come in and help us? And we don't market ourselves as miracle workers, but we did. We moved heaven and earth to make it happen. It would have been less stressful for the client and their employees. It would have been marginally cheaper, but the end result would have been way better if we had been involved from the beginning.
So it costs more and it wasn't as good as it could have been.
Correct. Yep.
With a lot of stress overlaid on it.
Oh, yeah.
Why
Huge.
did they make the initial decision not to use your services?
Oh, cost.
Yeah. Cost and entrepreneurs, and we've talked about the mindset of entrepreneurs, Heather, we think we can do everything until we're proven wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And sometimes there's no substitute for experience. You have to go through the fire to realize, yeah, maybe I
Especially
shouldn't
in
be
the
doing
first few years, I feel like you
Yep.
got to bang your head against that wall until you realize it's more expensive than just paying for somebody else to build you a door.
I don't want to call out any companies, but some companies, some software companies have very outstanding marketing functions that makes the owner think this is going to be easy.
Yeah.
We all know
And
what
so
company you're
we
talking
don't-
about.
Yes.
Like franchises?
I'm not going to name names.
But you're right, Mark. That's our role. Our role is to make it seem as easy as possible to buy. That if you buy it, all the wonderful dreams will come together for you like a completed jigsaw puzzle.
Yep.
But I also think that's where the mindset comes in of knowing your strengths and knowing what you're not going to do. Because if I know one thing as an entrepreneur, I will never, ever, ever, ever do is update my QuickBooks.
Yep.
I will not open QuickBooks. I mean, I'll look at my P&L
Yeah.
and I'll look at my transactions, but I will not reconcile my freaking QuickBooks. So I've had a bookkeeper since I started.
Yep.
And it's wonderful. And it's the cheapest $284
And
a month I spend.
But most startups will not start from that position. I think you, having been a business coach, understand that, and you've coached people. Most people, I deal with clients that even up to a few $100,000 in a year or two in business are still doing invoices on Microsoft Word, sending them out. They're not tracking them. They're not numbered. They have, again, they might not know what they don't know. They may have even heard of QuickBooks. That's not really for me. The other thing is they're not paying sales tax. They're like, oh, no, I don't have to pay sales tax. My company's very small. What? That's not going to be a defense. You know, there was a commercial with Tostitos, chips, and salsa.
Okay.
This was in the 80s or 90s, and they ran it during the Super Bowl, one of my favorites. The guy shows up to an IRS audit.
Oh, and he's eating the chips.
Yes,
Yep.
and he's
Yep.
eating chips. And the guy says, okay, so let's see here. The IRS auditor says, okay, so you had $100,000 in revenue and you're claiming $500,000 in expenses? And he goes, yes, I am. And he goes, do you have receipts to prove that? And he goes, no, I don't. And he goes, well, then what's in the bag? He goes, Tostitos, chips, and salsa. And the IRS guy goes, I smell refund. And the guy goes, really? And he goes, no, not really.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And I've seen big businesses think like, oh no, I know, I have a construction company. We don't have to charge tax, and we show a loss every year. They buy trailers, they buy $80,000 pickup trucks, and they're amortizing on stuff, and once they get you once, they're coming back for more.
Sure.
They'll continue to audit you and all that stuff.
Well, you guys are familiar with Robert Kiyosaki, right? I think most of us
Absolutely.
know
Yeah.
Yep.
the Rich Dad, Poor Dad,
Dad.
cash flow quadrant, right? Which one is your favorite, by the way, out of those two?
Oh, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or the cash flow quadrant.
Yeah, that's
to
what I
me.
figured.
Yeah.
So, what's the thing he would hire first when he would do business? The first one.
Numbers guy.
Yeah, it was his
Yeah.
accountant. His accountant, I guess, is what, I don't know, CPA, bookkeeper, whatever. I think it was just an accountant. Why? Do you remember why?
I don't.
Taxes.
Uh,
It was all about paying less in taxes.
Yep.
But I think also knowing your numbers. But anyway,
Well,
It-
one
it's
of the
the
books
top
I
three, by the
recommend
way.
all the time is the Tax-Free Wealth, which is Tom Wheelwright's collaboration with Robert Kiyosaki about it gives you just enough information to ask your CPA decent questions. Is it boring? Yes. To a non-numbers person. So boring. But it teaches you some of the good ways that you can utilize the tax code to not pay taxes. And you could only get to that point if you're in the I quadrant. But there's a lot of different ways about it. So I recommend it to everyone. I don't know how many people have actually read it.
I haven't. Let me write it down.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Here.
you.
Tax-Free Wealth. Boring, but informative. I've read it twice.
So I'm a huge fan of the book called The Goal by Eli Goldratt.
Okay.
It was in the 80s. Had a chance to meet him before he passed. And it just talked about, it was a business book that ended up in the self-help section of Bookstop and Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
And I have my employees read it. My kids are familiar with the concepts, even though now they're in their 20s. And it's just, it's sort of the ask why 5 times kind of thing. Why are we doing this?
Oh, yeah.
What's the goal? Who's the slowest? That's your bottleneck person or process or client or whatever. And then find ways to accelerate that bottleneck. So anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I said the top 3, after being a partner in more than 20 businesses and being self-unemployed now for 30 plus years, other than a little sabbatical I took to go work for one of my clients, which I'm going to ask you about, going from entrepreneurship back to, even though it's employee-owned shares in a business, but really going from self-employed to back working for somebody. So be prepared, because that's going to be my question.
Okay.
I put accounting and numbers in the top 3 for any of the businesses I've been involved with. And I'll go further. In the 1,500 clients that I've done business with my ad agency in 35 years, it boils down to those 3 things. And not in any particular order. Since you're here, I'll give you the respect. 1 is the accounting and the numbers. Okay? Number 2, sales. Okay? Sales fixes a ton of problems.
It masks a ton of problems.
Mass a ton of problems. But without it, you're dead.
You're right. Yep.
Okay? And 3 is marketing. If nobody knows what you're doing, you're winking at people in the dark, and nobody can see that, and nobody can react to it.
See, Grant Cardone flips those two. He says marketing is more important than sales because
I'll
you
go
can't
with
make
that.
the sales
But
without
that's why I said in
marketing.
no particular order. I'm
Yep.
not passing judgment here.
Yep.
But those are the 3.
But it's like saying, how do you lose weight? Eat less, exercise more. It sounds so
No, this
easy,
is-
but
okay,
people,
this is just
it's
pick-
hard.
Let's say you have 10 employees at your company, and 1 is a numbers person, 1 is the marketer, 1 is the salesperson, 1 is the office manager, 1 of them is the, whatever, chief strategist or whatever, the chief fun officer, because I've seen that title before. Anyway, you have the person who's in charge of pickup and deliveries, the person who's in charge of whatever. And all of a sudden, let's say something weird happens and there's some virus that takes over the world, and then, 40 to 80% of people's revenue disappears in their businesses. And
Totally fiction, by the way.
totally
Yes,
fiction.
never happens.
And you have to fire 7 people. Which 3 are you keeping? That's all I'm saying with the top 3.
Yep. Something that I see from our clients is that, and non-clients as well, is that business owners look at accounting and finance as a utility. And by that, I mean, I walk in, I flip the switch, the lights always come on. And there's not a great deal of thought given to how does the power come from the power plant across the transmission lines, through my meter, and into my building so that the lights come on. If accounting and finance is doing its job well, you continue to think of us that way. Whenever it doesn't, there's a hiccup, the systems don't work as well. That's when you start to question as a business owner, what's going on? I always flip the lights and they always come on. So that's a challenge that we have is it's when it's working, you don't think about it. When it's not working, then all of a sudden it's a crisis and you're screwed.
Yeah, just like the internet. I don't
Pretty
think about
much,
the internet
yes.
until the little red light's on. You're
Yeah.
like, wait, it's not blue, it's red. What's the deal here?
Yeah.
Yep.
My internet's
I've got
not
to
working.
use data.
Daughter
Oh my
comes
God.
out of her room. She's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So-
or everybody in your office is like just talking and goofing off because the internet's down. Anybody reboot anything? You're in panic mode, you know? Well,
to
think
reset.
about
you turn it off
nowadays.
and turn it on?
Look how spoiled we are, though, right? One, we're very dependent on the internet. But number two, we get on an airplane. You know, I was sitting next to a guy, we were flying cross country, and he's like, oh, great, now the fucking internet's not working, you know? And I'm thinking like, dude, you're in a tube flying at 400 miles an hour. You know what I mean? Seriously, like that's not...
35,000 feet.
That's pretty cool, you know? But that's what he focused on.
Is that
He
what
said,
you said?
No.
I was going to say.
No, I'm sorry. There's a lot of things I think that I don't actually say.
That astounds
And that's
me.
how you know he's
Yeah.
been in business for this
Well,
long.
I also hadn't started drinking because so.
Oh, that does help.
Yeah, that does social
Do you have any
lubricant.
Mark
Okay.
Tell me what the feelings were, the mindset, the whatever it was, and now whether or not what it was the right decision going from owning your own firm for 14 years or so,
Right.
and then going and working for somebody else.
When we lived in Houston and I had a network of relationships, it made sense to be self-employed and have my own firm.
Okay.
When we moved back to San Antonio and I was starting from scratch, it made sense to become an employee again.
So you're very pragmatic about the whole approach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cash
Can't
first.
afford to not eat. Yeah, I'm kind of hooked on it 3 times a day at least.
See, that's a sign that he's less of a careless entrepreneur like we've met, that their market value could be a lot higher if they work somewhere else.
Well,
Yet that they want to go start their own business for a whole bunch of different reasons, some of them legit. But
Well, planning, attention to detail. That's how you become an Eagle Scout.
yeah,
Howard.
right. Well, and also accountancy.
What rank did
PhD.
you get in the Scouts?
No, the entry level, man. I didn't even get my belt or the first pin or something. I
belt?
Did,
You don't
I
get
did,
belts.
It's
No, no, no.
Bobcat and Wolf.
I did get invited to make the car out of the balsa wood.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pinewood Derby.
we did
Sure.
that.
So
I
in
did-
what is no
I did
longer
that.
Indian Princesses at the YMCA.
Yep. Those were good times.
Oh, I loved
I
the
had
Indian
one of those too.
Princesses, Yeah.
Yep.
Do they have Eagle Scouts for girls now? Since you didn't want to bring
Girl
it up, I thought
Scouts,
I'd bring
they
it
have
up.
Girl
No,
Scouts.
they have Girl Scouts. They also have girls in what used to be Boy Scouts.
Right, but what's the
Eagle.
the top
Eagle Scout.
for females?
Eagle Scout.
Okay, well, I mean, it's
Even
fair.
in the Girl Scouts, do they have
No.
another name for it?
That's called Gold Award, and my Girl Scout friends tell me that it's not exactly the same as an Eagle Scout, and don't make that mistake.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have known otherwise. But to the layperson, there are similarities between Gold Awards for girls and Eagle Scouts for now boys and girls.
There's so much comedy
See,
material
my
here that
mom
I'm not
did
getting
one
into.
season
Right, I know.
of Girl
Bite my
Scouts
lip.
and was like, no, I'm not doing this. So
Yep.
I was self-selected out by my mother, who was like, I will not go to this every week. And valid. So.
Yep.
it was a
So
lot.
you're involved, obviously, in the
IMA,
IMA.
Institute of
So
Management Accountants.
Tell
Yep.
me about that, because you're obviously very involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it? Who does it serve? And how do people get involved?
Well, I always tell people who aren't familiar with us that we're a lot more fun than we sound. So I usually use that as my warm up. But we're open to accountants, finance people, tech, anybody else who's interested in learning and expanding more. I think the advantage to being an accounting person is that accounting people can't lie to you. And so as an entrepreneur, the more you can learn about accounting and finance, the less those people can take advantage of you, or that you'll hear more of the truth as opposed to only what you want to hear. So I'm extremely passionate about that. It's the industry version of the CPA Society, TXCPA here in town, of which I'm also a member. But IMA is open to anyone. The meetings are open even to non-members. The value proposition is fantastic, and for a bunch of accountants, we're not very focused on profit, and we're very thrilled to have non-members attend our meetings.
Is there, or should there be, an effort really to help the school system overcome this deficit? Thank you.
Nice, big words. Not as big as Mark. Not as big as Mike's words, but you're getting there. I'm counting letters.
Though, but teaching kids more about the numbers and rolling it in somehow. If it's not the public school system, how do we do that?
I'm not sure. I know the accounting profession shot itself in the foot when shortly after I came out of school, we had a 4-year degree requirement to sit for the CPA exam. Some genius had the bright idea to make it a 5-year school requirement, so 150 hours before you could even sit for the exams. So at the same time that the talent pool, the pipeline of students was drying up, they erected barriers to entry to the profession and made it even harder. And then they were shocked when the number of people coming into the profession was way smaller than the number of people who were leaving the profession.
They're trying to make it elite.
They were trying to make it harder and harder to justify, I guess, higher bill rates and higher draws for partners, which is fine.
And get more money.
Of course, totally support that, but probably not the best strategy to constrict supply when demand is already going through the roof. So, kind of self-inflicted, own goal.
There should be a path, though, to this financial excellence, right? That we need to have for the younger generation.
Very much so.
Earlier on, right?
See, I have I find that it's not that people aren't smart enough to learn it and understand it, but there's a lot of guilt and shame and anxiety associated with numbers and money, especially. And that's a lot of mindset. So where do you see business owners landing there, and what are some good ways for them to be able to overcome that, because it's necessary? But
business owners usually get into business because they're passionate about what they're doing, and then there's also a profit motive. But frequently it's the passion first, and you hope that translates into dollars. Sometimes it can turn into revenue, but not cash, like we've already talked about, and that's an issue.
Yes.
I think there's an urgent need for more financial awareness. And so that's something that by making it harder to become a CPA, that side of the profession has really shot ourselves in the foot. IMA, on the other hand, has launched a recent certification that's kind of a stepping stone towards the Certified Management Accountant. So if I could make a shameless plug for the FMAA, Financial and Managerial Accounting Associate, I believe is what IMA calls it. It's a simpler certification process. And so for some who aren't hardcore accounting people, that is a fantastic way to get smarter about accounting from a business level perspective. Now, obviously, if you're a hardcore accountant, even if you started with FMAA, you'd probably still want to proceed to CMA and or CPA. But it's you got to know this stuff, because otherwise people will take advantage of you.
so
Are you aware of a group, or I guess a group here in the San Antonio area that helps budding entrepreneurs understand the language of business and the method of business that they could plug into and get some direction?
You mean method of business, finance, and numbers? Not just
Really,
business in
it's
general.
everything. We were talking about branding, understanding strategy branding.
Well, there's
As an
continuing education for entrepreneurs. In some Northeast Independent School District, they have these classes, and they'll have accountants, they'll have attorneys, they'll have marketing people teach these classes.
But they're not teaching the kids in this.
No. They're teaching adults
Oh, jeez.
in the kids' classrooms.
Well, that's the thing, Mark. To get it into the
in the evening.
schools, the red tape that you would have to go through to get it into the public school system is just hideously
Yeah, you have
huge obstacle. Like, it has to go all the way to the state Supreme Court, blah, 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 blah. And they're already in one of the school districts in San Antonio is in a $30 million deficit or something like
because
that.
they don't understand financing either.
Yeah, it just doesn't work at the core
but neither
level.
do a lot of government people, because they get their stuff guaranteed. They get all their health care paid. They don't have to manage the same kind of bills we have to manage. So, sorry, now we're going to talk politics. Thank you for
I was
picking
ready
the
to
gloves
swerve
off.
there.
thank
Let's
you,
go,
man. No.
baby.
I chair the advisory council for San Antonio College so that students who get their associate's degree are work ready. I've been doing that for 14 years. Over those 14 years, I'm having trouble picking classes that get them work ready, because the really smart people, 360-degree camera, from the state are putting other requirements for classes that have nothing to do with their major. And I understand spelling is important, all this, but that's not what I'm talking about. Classes that are not important for their degree. So what happens is you have a lot of kids that are out of high school. that make it into the college system, but that are only going to stay there for 2 years. They're not going for 4 years, and God forbid they're not going for 5 years either to become CPAs. So we need them to be work ready so that when they come out, they can make more than just a few dollars an hour. They can make a decent livable wage. And so when you have people that are making decisions about what they should be learning in school when they are so far removed from what reality is, that is the problem. And that's college level. Now imagine going all the way down to the elementary school level. And kids are smart. I mean, they get dumber as they get older, you know?
But they start
but
off
that's
smart.
the thing.
They start
our-
off smart.
You know, I mean, this
So
could
they can
very
absorb it,
easily
but nobody's teaching it.
Yeah.
like dip into the political and conspiracy theory side of the world. But like, yeah, that's why it's so difficult to get it into schools is because there's an entire
Well, conspiracies are things that you can't prove. I mean, this is proven. I'll give you a list after when we go off air of people that I've talked to that are in current government.
I feel
that
like
don't
you'll
understand
never
accounting.
find a group of people that have more strong opinions about this particular subject than entrepreneurs, but also a group of people who do not want to get canceled on Google more than a group of small business entrepreneurs so
YouTube,
they
right?
don't
Yeah.
say them.
Right.
Yeah, but you know, Tracy Tallman, she's in the Alamo Heights entrepreneurs
Oh,
Shark Tank thing. So entrepreneurs usually are the ones that are stepping in to supplement and teach and do. It's not our responsibility. We're not getting paid to do it, but we know the importance of building more soldiers that become generals in our army of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think
Generally-
that's part of an entrepreneurial spirit too. Is the cup overflows, right?
Yeah,
We're looking
share
to
the wealth.
share.
But that's the thing. It's like affect what you can, but don't fight against something that's refusing to change. So I look at it as like I can impact my children and the people that I come into contact with, but I'm not going to go fight against an entire
Well, a lot of times you
established
can't
school system.
afford to work with people who are constantly working against you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Well, before we swerve, let me just follow up. So you can't boil the whole ocean, but you can try to boil a teaspoon or a tablespoon at a time. And so one of the things I did a million years ago was I created an Accounting 101 class. It's about an hour long. I developed the materials, and it's accounting for non-accountants. And the logic behind that was during Y2K, and I don't want to get sideways with anybody's legal department. So a firm that I may have been working with at the time, we were implementing a lot of accounting systems, ERP systems, and there weren't a lot of accountants who understood how to do that. So I was in a department full of engineers that were implementing accounting, because engineers are smart people. And so you hire those people, and surely they can figure it out. But they ended up talking to accountant clients, and it was apples and oranges. And so I created a 1 hour, maybe hour and a half class. I've still got the materials. And so if anybody who's watching this is interested and wants just an hour and a half worth of content, totally free, reach out to me afterwards with the info that's going to be, I guess, at the end of our podcast.
Which is now, by the way, since we're over time. But how do people get in touch with you?
Okay, they can reach me. The best way is through email. That's mlovelace@mgrar.com. If you want to do it phonetically, it would be mlovelace@mgrar.com.
All right. Well, great job, Mike. I appreciate
Thank
you
you very
coming
much.
in. All right. As we wrap up this, this broad show that we did, we covered a lot of topics and even a little bit of the school system and politics, maybe just a smidge. If you guys want to, of course, continue to follow, go over to satalkradio.com and click on all our social media icons there and follow us online. And I'm all twisted up on my outro here. But as we wrap up the show, quick reminder to check out our latest podcast and catch video version of the show anytime by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. That's going to do it for this one. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you on the next one.
Excellent. Thank you.